really excited to
You're
be here.
starting, by the way, so
Okay, buddy.
just
I'm
to see
in.
if you can, you're not as
I'm,
rusty as you were.
oh, I'll
Not
be
that you ever
rusty.
were.
All right. I'll be rusty. I don't think I'll be rusty. I'm never afraid. Never afraid to
Y-
do this. I don't know why.
You're good at it. That's why.
Hi. Oh, hi, everybody. Look at this. It's so nice to be back. It's a tan Zev and a tan Dean, and everybody's tanned. I got the Italian sun on my face. You have the Toronto sun on your face. We're talking to people in Canada, the United States. As a matter of fact, I believe the latest count, 112 countries represented here on our Substack channels between both thenarrative.org and deanblundell.substack.com. I
Wow.
could not be happier to be back. Welcome to the Substack. Sorry I left you, Zev. Sorry, buddy.
It was okay, and you look fantastic. So I'm glad you've got that tan. Do you think you got a different shade of tan in Rome than you do in Toronto? Is the sun different over there than over here?
No, it's the same sun, strangely
It's
enough.
the
I mean,
same. Only one sun. Only one
yeah,
sun.
it's the same. That thing you see in the sky, it's here, and you can still see it in Italy like 6 hours later, depending on when you're. But dude, it was incredible.
Yeah.
I needed the break. I think I put out a nice Substack post about how important it is to kind of slow down. And hi Peg, welcome back. Hi Peggy. Hi you. Um, it was much needed. I don't think, people think that we have these cushy jobs, which we do, like, hey, do we work from home? Sure. Do we have nice chairs? Yes. Do we have to leave home? No, but that's also a curse because you get wrapped up in your own head all the time and you're grinding content, just like all of these beautiful people. Hi, Jane. Great to see you. Jane in North Carolina. And so I found myself, and I was excited because you and I were talking about it. I was excited to go to Italy and do some interviews. I set a couple of things up. I was there for 2 weeks, and I'm like, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do both, right? And I couldn't get my head out of my phone the first 2 days I was there. And my therapist is like, dude, shut it down. Just 2 weeks. You do this all the time. You haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. You're always grinding, putting out content. Just shut it down. Hi, Chad. And second day, my girlfriend was like, "That's enough, dude. You're not like you're here physically. You're here. Your mind is not here." My mind
Yeah.
was on the big, beautiful bill, which we'll talk about. My mind was on, the Carney administration. My mind was on disinformation. My mind was on protecting the marginalized. My mind was on not losing space in arguments. And I shut it down. And it was really funny because I came back and I literally had to do this before I logged on to Twitter, which, don't do it, everybody. Here we go.
Or you know what? We should be doing it maybe. Yeah, I read your post that you did. It was a beautiful post about your vacation. It was really
Oh, thank you.
profound and made me think, oh my God, I wish I could be there. But also the notion of just like taking a moment to breathe, a moment of zen before diving into all this crazy stuff that we deal with all the time is so
Mhm.
powerful and so important. And I've been doing it actually since I read your post. Every time I've just been like, I had a moment. I did it with Olga earlier on today. I was like, let's just take a moment. And and so maybe we should do it. Let's just take a moment. Everyone, let's take a moment of Zen.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, let's do it. Are you ready for the five stack? The top five stories on the five stack today. Let's begin with the biggest story of the day in Canada and in other
Mm,
parts of the world. But it is also an American story because, the Canadians do things very differently. They have a thing called the throne speech, which is
yeah.
normally done by the Governor General of Canada. But this time they brought in the superstar, the headliner, the very, very top of the Canadian food chain, King
The
Charles
big
III.
guns.
The big guns came
Yeah.
in. First time since 1977 that the throne speech was read by a monarch. And this is really the prime minister's speech, but it's being read
Mhm.
by the in this case King Charles III. You have done a great summary on your Substack about what went on today in that speech. Tell us why it's so important and what it means in terms of defining the relationship between Canada and the United States in a Trump era.
Thanks for asking, Zev. I knew we were going to get to this because we talked about it ahead of time. So I prepped for it by watching the entire throne speech from start to finish. I'm going to give people a quick Cole's Notes tour through what a throne speech is. We've got, I think 75% of our audiences are in the United States, you probably more than me. A throne speech is the delivery of the new government's mandate that's supposed to act as not a warning. I don't think it's a warning, but it's supposed to act as a hat tip to the rest of the country to charge all the newly elected members of parliament, which would be Congress and the House of the United States of America. It's as if, someone delivered Donald Trump's speech on Inauguration Day, but it's usually done in Canada by someone called the Attorney General. The Attorney General is
Governor
the
General.
royal Governor General, sorry, the royal representative of the throne here in Canada, right? So in this case, Mark Carney bypassed the Governor General. He put a call into his friend Prince Charles, who's now King
King.
Charles, and said, "Hey, listen, we're at a kind of an interesting pivot time here in Canadian history, because the guys to the south, who you lost the war to, are now threatening to invade this country, saying it should have always been theirs anyway. Would you do me a solid and fly over to Canada? We'll send a plane," which they did, to pick up you and Queen Camilla. And would you give the mandated throne speech to these beautiful people who just elected me Prime Minister of Canada? MAGA killer, Mark Carney, I like to call him. He's a MAGA killer. And you got to keep in mind, I mean, we're in a tenuous time when it comes to international relationships with the Trump regime, that vile piece of trash, Donald Trump, running around, closing off relationships, destroying America's economy, destroying America's 200-year-old friendships with different allies who've bought and bled and fought for the United States of America. So King Charles comes and he delivers a MAGA killing speech in code. It was one of the finest performances and one of the most incredibly symbolic statements ever made in the history of Canadian politics, maybe North American politics, in the history of the Commonwealth, where the monarch of the Commonwealth, the member of the family who's the king of the family, think of it in terms of the mob if you want, the king of the family who established the world as we know it today, came and basically said, "Canada is unique. I bleed this Canadian blood. It is in my system. It is who I am. You're at a unique crossroads in history, and your Canadian values, combined with your ability to uphold democracy and the changing of the guard in the world as we see it." And he said, "I know it's unsettling, but you are going to forge ahead. You are going to be the new leaders of the free world." And he didn't say it in those words, and I'm paraphrasing, but the attempt to let the free world know that Canada's sovereignty is going to become a bellwether. It's going to become the lighthouse for democracy as that old relationship with the United States fades. And he made a very specific point of talking about how Canada is now engaging in new relationships with other partners. And we're going to uphold these traditional Canadian values of kindness, of effort, of innovation. And then he delivered Mark Carney's plan. So, first thing he did was take a massive dump on Donald Trump and reassert Canada's sovereignty. This is the monarch of Canada. He
Mm.
sat on his own throne, which has been left here for a couple hundred years. Every time the king or the
Really?
queen would come to town, he's like, "Hey, I remember this seat. This is a great seat." And he delivered a stunningly beautiful, unity laden rebuke of the movement, the fascist movement that is going around the world, and said basically, "Canada, you're in charge. You need to lead that charge with us, with our partners in the free world." Then he laid out the mandate, which was incredible because what he did was he took all the bullets out of the Conservative Party of Canada or Maple MAGA gun, capping immigration, shortening spending, stopping spending, reinvesting into work programs that are going to turn Canada into an economic and military superpower. And then King Charles walked out, and he took time to talk to everybody. He was beaming. He was so happy to be here, and it was one of the more incredible moments, incredible rebukes, and historically today will go down because this is the first time this has happened since 1977, the first time since 1957 that a sovereign has given the throne speech. Queen Elizabeth, his mother, which he made reference, said that was a unique time shortly after the war when things are unsettling. We're in the same place today. Um, it was beautiful to watch. It made me so incredibly proud to be American and British because I was born in England. I became a Canadian citizen. We moved here as a young man. I think I was two, and I have never, ever, ever been more settled internally. I've never been more proud. I've never been more aware, and I've never been more sure that Canada is going to put a nail in the MAGA coffin. Never been more sure of it.
It's so interesting the way you put it because, of course, King Charles is a monarch, he's a king. They're fighting to make Donald Trump a king in the United States. And in some
Mhm.
ways, King Charles is quite fond of Donald Trump. I mean, they've got sort of a budding friendship there over the years. They've been quite close to each other. And in fact, I think King Charles was planning, but then decided against it, to visit the United States as well. And maybe
Mhm.
even give Donald Trump some sort of offer to join the Commonwealth. That was scrubbed, I believe, but that was floated a few weeks ago. I guess I'm saying, Canada's an interesting case of being both a monarchy and a very good democracy, functioning democracy. Do you think it's a model for the United States? Do you think that that's what King Charles is trying to project onto the United States, that there is a way to do both?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was a real that's a really keen assessment, and I also think that in reference to this tour that King Charles was supposed to go on in the United States, which has been canceled, which was precipitated by a letter that King Charles sent to Donald Trump after he won, saying it's it'd be nice to have a closer relationship. And Donald Trump, if you remember, shortly after getting that letter, was beaming like, "Yeah, I got a letter from the King of England.
He
This is
likes the
great." He's
king.
a royal guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
because that's what he wants. He wants to be that guy,
Yeah.
institutional wealth, where the government, which is true, the British people and their taxes go to pay for the incredible wealth and the
Yeah.
lifestyle that the royal family leads. So that's really what Donald Trump is doing right now. He's living off the taxpayer dime, calls himself a king. But King Charles has softened over the years, right? So in his speech, he went after in really incredible ways the importance of democracy, the importance of relationships with indigenous people and the marginalized, social programs, the environment. As you know, King Charles is a big environment guy, big climate guy.
Mhm.
And he effectively kind of intimated that this should be a model that everybody should live by. And that was shortly after establishing Canada's sovereignty. So a couple of things. I think he challenged Donald Trump to, understand that there is a way that democracies work and that ain't it. But I think he also absolutely made it absolutely clear that he in no way supports Donald Trump and what he's trying to do to the United States of America and this new multipolar challenge that we're going through. And really, why I thought that was fascinating is because, as I said, Donald Trump is a massive royal guy.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know this, Fox didn't cover it. They haven't talked about it. OAN hasn't covered it. All the fake news outlets haven't covered it because Donald Trump told them, no mas. I don't want anybody talking about this throne speech today, just in case he levels me and gives it to me. But if you read between the lines and if you can use critical thought, which most maggots and maple maggots can't,
Mhm.
they just saw, the king show up to Canada and they hate the royals. Well, it's very different in the United States because that's Donald Trump's wet dream is to be King Charles, right? So very interesting. And I don't think it'll make any sense to him. I don't think he's going to pay attention to it. And I don't think it really fucking matters. Kind of like it doesn't matter that what Donald Trump does from here on in with Canada, because today we established that Canada's just going to go it alone with better partners and better people. And that relationship is over.
Not only go it alone, though, there is a sense in Canada that it is going to be the new superpower for the free world. And
Yeah.
that is what they're building. And for Americans, they have not been challenged by a left, or not left leaning, but a liberal leaning kind of democratic version that is going to be challenging their superpower status ever. And here they are facing that challenge that they sort of created. This is a crisis they created through the tariffs and all these other, and just electing Donald Trump. And Canada is going to be putting up quite an effort to challenge the United States, and I don't know if people in America really understand how serious Carney is about this mounting effort to make Canada the leading superpower for the free world.
No, they don't, and I'm glad you pointed that out. And a great point of difference is if you look at today's throne speech and the promise to reinvent Canada into a raw materials, economic, trade, absolute superpower. And we have all the raw materials the entire world needs, so we know
Yeah.
we have it. And how his promise a couple of days ago, we're going to build faster. Today, we're going to build faster tomorrow, this week, this month, and for the next 5 years. We're going to do things never thought imaginable. And that wasn't in the same line as Donald Trump's like, you've never seen anything like this. It's none of that stuff. He's Mark Carney is not he doesn't lie. He doesn't invent things. He just goes and does shit. But the point of difference I wanted to make was if you watch Trump's inauguration day speech and the throne speech, Trump's inauguration day speech was a warning to the free world that he's going to fuck things up. He's coming for you. He's coming for people that are not the same color as him. He's going to get rid of everybody who fucked him over. He's going to get rid of everybody who fucked America. America first, America first, America first, right? Today's throne speech, which Mark Carney and the government of Canada wrote for the king, but the king, obviously, last line of defense, can say whatever he wants, rewrote it as he wanted it
Oh, yeah.
and inserted himself in it. Um, Today's throne speech was about unity, was about moving forward, was about leaving old norms behind and forging new relationships. It was about including the people of Canada and making us the stakeholders and the owners. And you know what really struck me today, which was incredible, was the continual reference to the indigenous people of this
Mm.
country and how they're our partners, and the land acknowledgement, which the right hates. They're like, we're not on ceded territory. Those people are our subjects. Get in line. You're fucking part of America, and we'll tell you how things go. No, 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 no. Mark Carney and the King of England, who, let's shoot straight. When England came here, the former king and queen that sent everybody here back in the 17 and 1800s, are like, wipe them all out. There was a concerted effort to understand and to incorporate Canada's Indigenous community, the people in marginalized communities, social programs, into this incredible evolution of Canada as an economic and capitalistic and entrepreneurial superpower. And it was encouraging, it was inclusive, it was hopeful. It wasn't this dour, fuck you, now I'm back, I'm coming to get you, and I'm going to bring all my horses and we're going to run you over, which was Donald Trump and the MAGA vibe. There was nothing but unity there. There was nothing but inclusion there. And it was a stark contrast in both countries.
But that is also pragmatism on the king's part. I mean, and Carney's part. Canada, as far as I understand it, is old treaties. Some of it only spoken, some of it has been written, but some of the spoken treaties put the First Nations as 50-50 owners of Canada. And in fact, if Trump were to try and annex Canada, he'd have to get the king's permission because he's the king of Canada, but he'd also have to get the First Nations to sign on. And that is why there's still till today such a powerful First Nations lobby, but also a First Nations recognition in Canada that
Mhm.
doesn't exist in the United States. But they sort of have to do it in the united way, or they'll be vulnerable to one side flipping.
Yeah, and keep in mind too that Canada's treaty with the indigenous communities and all the nations that own this land is with the crown. It's not with Canada. It's not with the federal government. It's not
Right,
with
right.
provincial government. It's with the king. So those
Hmm.
treaties that were signed, Treaty 13, 15, 6, 8, whatever treaty it is in every country, it's an agreement with the crown, right? To your point. And that annexation stuff, which has simply died, right? Like they're not talking about it
No,
anymore.
I gave
Was
up on
part of
that.
a podcast that I listened to the other day where the new ambassador who's a Trumper to Canada was going, oh, it was a joke. It's no big deal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not only is it not a joke,
uh,
you guys still mean it. And today was a bullet into the heart of any expansionist dreams of the United States and the Trump regime. It was a nuclear statement by the king of fucking England, the king of the Commonwealth, to say, I'm standing here for Canadian values. Every time he said this today, it was beautiful. Every time I come to this country, Canada seeps into my blood and becomes more of who I am. And this is from the family that founded this country. This is from the lineage of people who, granted us this beautiful land. It's also the lineage of people, who've done some pretty horrible things, but we've evolved. Canada's evolved. We've progressed. The king, the royal family's progressed. America's going backwards 100 miles an hour into a fascist dictatorship, while Canada and the rest of the free world, with the help of the King of England, King Charles III, put their democratic, value-filled flag in the ground and said, not only we're not going anywhere, get behind us because we are now the leaders of the free world.
Quite a coup for Mark Carney to have the king
Hmm.
show up and do the throne speech. We can do high and low on the FiveStack, right? We're capable of doing
Yeah,
both. Yeah.
100%. We
So,
can do it
on
all.
the flip side of the story is the other royal story that's really interesting. That it takes America and Canada and Britain and brings it all together in one. The Sussexes are this is Harry and Meghan are formalizing professional separation. So they're going to have dedicated chiefs of staff and separate teams for Meghan and separate teams for Harry. Now, they're not separating, but they're separating professionally. And Harry was away. He was in China all Memorial Day weekend while Meghan stayed at home in Montecito with the kids. Critics are wondering, is this relationship in trouble? But more or so, they're also saying this is the very system that this couple criticized. The Crown has separate teams for the Queen and the King, and this was one of the things that they were criticizing before they moved to the United States. Now they're doing exactly the same thing in California.
Mm.
What do you think?
I know people that know them.
I don't people know
So
them too.
I'll, I'll tell you what I think of
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
I don't have any doubt in my mind that as much as it's really awesome to think of Prince Harry and Prince Meghan as this rogue couple of lovers who
yeah,
got out from underneath the
yeah.
stern arm and iron fist of the royal family's PR machine.
Mhm.
I think in the next year or so, you're probably going to see a separation of Meghan and Harry, from what I understand. I think it's too much for her. I think Prince Harry is finding out, what it's like to be a royal on the outside. I think that financially, it's been very difficult for them. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, he begged for security from the crown, ongoing security from the crown, which evaporated this year, and they're like, "No, you left, dude."
Yeah.
So,
It's the
I
FAFO rule, right? I mean, this is that
yes.
the FO part of the FAFO rule. And, and it is true that people who know them, I mean, firstly, they describe quite a mercurial kind of relationship, and that Meghan is tough to deal with under even ordinary circumstances. Never mind her high maintenance moments. So
Yeah.
he's probably had enough. So it's maybe not a surprise that he's in China on Memorial Day weekend while. Their daughter was celebrating the weekend. It was her birthday this weekend, and Meghan was being a single mom there for the weekend during that birthday. So you're probably beginning to see the signs of not it could be a real separation, and that would be really interesting to see about whether he gets back into the fold as he returned to the aforementioned King Charles's favorite Christmas card list or not.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of money, protection, and
Mhm.
security in the royal family. Number
Yeah.
one. Number two, when you start hearing things like this and seeing people spending, really important days like their kids' birthdays, 12,000 miles apart,
Yeah.
it's not just happening today. It's been happening for a while. We haven't seen them in public for a long period of time.
Mhm.
And as heroic as everybody thought Prince Harry and Meghan were, the entire time I'm like, dude, you're doing the wrong thing. Like,
Yeah.
selling out his family, selling out his dad, selling out his brother, selling out his sister-in-law, selling out the crown. It's like, man, there's a grace period when you make a decision like that where you can either decide to cash in on it and tell state secrets, or you can go keep your mouth shut and go do the work. And I don't think Meghan and Harry are long long for if I'm going to give it 6 months. Okay,
Yeah.
let me just put it out there. I'll give it 6 months.
And I think they had an opportunity, at least Harry had an opportunity to come out with something really interesting and then came out with this sort of self-indulgent book about being the spare and not having the bigger bedroom or something, in the palace, which didn't sound to me like, doing God's
Yeah.
work. But yeah,
Woe's
so
him. Woe's him and the terrible
yeah.
life he's had. Yeah,
So
it's
hard living in a
awful.
palace. Difficult stuff. That is story number four. Number three on the countdown is the Republicans and the big fleecing bill, is what I'm calling it. They're calling it the big, beautiful bill. So, Senate Republicans face seven major divisions over Trump's massive tax and immigration package. Majority Leader John Thune, sorry, he says he's only really able to lose three votes, and no Democrats are expected to support the legislation. It's going to be very tough for this bill to get through the Senate because everyone is upset about all sorts of things going on, whether it's the SALT deduction, whether it's the other provisions in the bill that sort of give the Trump complete power without any court interruption, and there's just the Medicaid battles that the cuts in Medicaid, the cuts in Medicare. This is a very difficult bill to get through the Senate. But he got it through the House, so he may get it through the Senate because he's got power. He's able to go in there and be King Trump and tell them all, you got to do this. And he did that in the House. It worked. Can it work in the Senate?
Mm. Yeah, you did a great piece on the bill the second it came out. It was funny because I could hear your frustration in your piece. The one where you've got the here's the you call it the big fleecing bill. He's
Yeah.
fleecing America, and I think to understand, there's a couple great examples of this bill that should help people kind of understand how ridiculous this is, and how much of a tax grab it is, and how much of a power grab it is. One is there's a paragraph that is in this, it's buried in the actual bill, that effectively says if you want to charge or hold a government official accountable for any potential crimes they may have committed,
Mhm.
whether it be colluding with foreign governments, whether it be the emoluments thing, like, I don't know, accepting a $400 million jet from Qatar, you have to post a bond first, a significant financial commitment, and then it goes into the courts. Now, what that effectively does is it cools the jets of anybody who's going to make any kind of commitment to taking on any kind of public official for lying, cheating, stealing, all the things that you got elected not to do, right?
Mhm.
And it not only makes it impossible, it makes it improbable that anybody, anybody who commits a crime that is in the Trump administration, which is ongoing and has been going on for quite some time, is ever held accountable for any of those crimes. So there's that. There's the protectionist aspect to continue to enrich themselves in the process of running America into the fucking ground. The other part of this bill that I found really interesting was the $5 trillion deficit ceiling. The rise in the 5 trillion in deficit spending. So adding another 5 trillion to America's budget. This is on the backs of Donald Trump allowing Elon Musk and Doge to go in and cut $2 trillion. 2 trillion from the budget. That's what he's going to do. Waste, fraud, and abuse. That's how they term it. When they get
That's
rid
what
of
he wanted to
programs like
do. Yeah.
SNAP, waste,
Yeah.
fraud, and
Yeah.
abuse. Now that 5 trillion that is being added to the deficit, that only includes that 5 trillion is purely waste, fraud, and abuse. It is giving more money to the military. It is giving more money to cabinet officials to go and act like Kristi Noem is acting, where she's added 300 million to the the DHS budget over the past 3 months. So she can run around and kick the shit out of immigrants and send people to CCOT, et cetera, et cetera, et
She needs a
cetera.
new plane. She needs a new
Yeah,
$50 million plane,
that's
of
what they
course.
asked her in the Congress in the hearing. Did you hear that? She's like, are you going to be taking this fifty
Yeah.
million dollar plane?" She goes, "That one or maybe the other one. I don't know." I mean, if you didn't think for a second, if you think for a second that this big beautiful bill has anything to do, and then cutting Medicaid for 13.5 million people,
Yeah.
cutting social programs, SNAP programs, food delivery programs for the marginalized, cutting, which has already happened, cutting, disease prevention expertise and tracking. I mean, all of this bill has, and you know what the fucking funny part, Zev, and I want your opinion on it. You're starting to watch maggots go, this is no good. Ron Johnson. Yeah, this is a terrible bill. It's going to destroy us and kill Americans. Rand Paul. What the fuck are we doing? Why are we doing this? There are some really key MAGA Republicans that have just broken away, but they're like flat out insulting him. Right?
It's really
He
interesting.
lost David Sachs the other day in his
Mm.
All In podcast. His crypto czar. He's like, that's fucking bananas. It's going to kill Americans. I don't know what we're doing. So I don't know if it's going to get past the Senate. But to your point, it is the meanest fucking bill I have ever read.
Yeah. It actually also gives really rich people in in the blue states
Oh yeah.
mostly a massive deduction. They don't have to pay their local taxes because they can just take them off the federal taxes, up from $10,000 to $30,000 a year, which is ridiculous as you're cutting services. But you point out the divisions in the Senate, and it's interesting. The Russian affiliated senators like Johnson and Rand Paul, sorry, are opposing this bill. It is interesting that that's happening at the same time that Trump is calling Putin crazy over Ukraine. Are we beginning to see this sort of shift happening where Russia's not getting what it wants from Trump, and maybe Trump and they're pushing back in the way that they are doing now through the Senate by using their senators. These are clearly, Johnson and Rand Paul are very affiliated with Moscow. Are
Mhm.
they the one? Are they opposing this bill because of that? And if that's the case, that'll be a really interesting, clash between, or a sign of at least tension maybe between Trump and Putin. I don't believe that there really is much daylight between the two of them, but if there is, this would be the beginning parts of seeing that. So that'll be
Did you
interesting.
see? Yeah, did you see what Trump put out the other day? He's like, because a couple of days ago, May 26th, I think it was yesterday, Putin sent 500 different incendiary devices to
Thousand
his
actually over the
ballistic
last
missiles.
3 days. It's been really
1,000
bad.
over the
Yeah,
past 3 days, yeah.
yeah,
And hundreds of people injured, murdered, killed. And Donald Trump took to Truth Social to conduct foreign policy, which are diplomatic fucking relations, which is what he
This-
does.
yeah,
Called Putin crazy. He's like, he's gone crazy. This isn't the Putin I know. Yeah,
yeah.
it 100%
It's
is,
the
dude.
Putin we
Like you're,
know. It's the
yeah,
Putin we've known all along. We've been saying it
yeah,
for years. So, dude, where have you been? But he said he
yeah,
was crazy, and that is the number two story. Actually, the number two story is all about Ukraine, and it's not so much about these thousand, drones and missiles being shot into civilian areas by Russia, killing people. At a time when they supposedly are looking for peace. I mean, this is
yeah.
not like, this is not the right time to be ramping up the biggest assault on Ukraine since the start of the war. But there is a bill sitting in the Senate as well. This is the other sort of big Senate story. 80 senators have already approved, they co sponsored this bill that would increase sanctions on Russia with 500% tariffs on countries buying Russian oil. And it's just sitting there. So you've got this heightened tension now because there's all these, this military assault on Kyiv and other parts of Ukraine. And there is a way to stop this. The Sanctioning Russian Act of 2025, it has a supermajority. It's got everyone supporting it. And yet it's just sitting there because John Thune is waiting for Donald Trump to say, hey, it's okay. Now, that's not the way Congress is meant to work. Congress
Mhm.
has to decide it's okay to put it forward. And they should be deciding to put this bill forward. And as they're, thinking about how they're going to cut everyone's lives and making money for the very rich and chopping services for the poor, maybe they should be defending democracy by not having to wait for the president of the United States to give them the go ahead on this important bill. So we mentioned it last hour. Olga and I are really pushing everybody to call their senators to do something about what's
Mhm.
going on in Ukraine. Don't forget, if Putin and Russia are not defeated in Ukraine, they will start assaulting other countries in Western Europe, all those countries, those NATO countries along the Russian border. They've already said they are. They're building big reinforcement facilities all the way up to Finland. They're starting to increase
Yep.
their capabilities. We can't afford to have Russia succeed in Ukraine. And there's a bill that can really help that, and hopefully everyone calls their senators and does something about it, so they can push that bill forward.
I'm glad to hear you talk about that bill, the Sanction Russia 2025 bill. And I also want to kind of redirect everybody to the reason why it's not passing, the reason why that Congress hasn't passed it. One of the things that Donald Trump has done, and great story that I put out, you can go to my Substack and check it out, about U.S. judges, the judiciary, saying we're going to arm ourselves with our own
Mhm.
police
Good
force at this
story.
point because we are threatened every day by this man. Our colleagues are being arrested and charged and shackled and thrown in jail for literally just doing their fucking jobs, being made examples of. So he's trying to scare the shit out of the judiciary. Well, judges have a couple of triggers and tricks up their sleeves to be able to make those things happen. And so they traditionally will stand on their values, the decisions that they make. You're seeing it now with Judge Boasberg and a whole bunch of other different judges saying, no, fuck you. We're not interested. We're just going to get our own security. We are judges. We are the law. We are the last line of defense. Well, Congress is very different, right? As is the Senate,
Mhm.
because every single one of those Republicans that's going, do I push this bill through? Do I cross the floor? Has been threatened with their jobs.
Mhm.
And when you bring it all back down to some kind of kitchen table explanation about why this bill hasn't passed, it really sits in the pocketbook. It sits in reputation. It sits in convenience, where you've got all these congressmen and women, men and women in the Senate, who unfortunately are on the Republican or MAGA side, whether they're not MAGAs doesn't really matter, who, profiles encourage stop when it comes to, yeah, but am I going to lose all the private jets? And am I going to lose the detailed security? Am I going to lose? I'm not kidding
Lose the
you.
crypto.
Am I going to lose am I going to
Yeah.
lose this cushy, beautiful
Mhm.
lifestyle where I'm finally somebody and I get all these great things and I've got an office here and if I get to go to fucking France and meet really important people and
Mhm.
I'm somebody. That's legitimately what is holding up this bill that could save the Ukrainian people, that could put an end to the Russian regime terrorist state. And it's fucking perfect in my mind because that's America.
Mhm.
That's the pig economy, the pig mindset of Americans, the greed, the self-interest, the inability to do the right thing for the fucking sake of doing the right thing. And it kind of dawned on me the other day when I was reading your post. I was like, oh, I get this. It's all these fucking unqualified assholes who've been given these incredible jobs and massive salaries and insider tips on day trading and stock market crashes and crypto that are now sitting there going, if I piss off the dotard, will I lose my gig?
Mhm.
And that makes me sick. At the same time, it makes the whole thing make sense to me.
It does. And, Scott Pelley, we don't have the tape, unfortunately, but I mentioned it earlier to you, this
Oh yeah, it's
incredible,
convocation speech. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful speech where he talked about how history is really capable of, of turning enemies into heroes, heroes into enemies, and then spoke about the fear that is enveloping every institution in America, whether it's media institutions or universities, academic institutions, or just people's homes, that there is this new rising fear that you can't speak freely in America. And that is such a, here's Scott Pelley, who's a super respectable guy who really knows what he's talking about. And he has to go off camera to a convocation speech to give this chilling, urgent message to America to say that their fear is here and that, people need to understand that that fear is rising and extremely dangerous. And that is, to your point, exactly what's happening. You've got a people in America that are a small group of people that are holding power, and they're so scared of losing it that they're willing to
Mhm.
let everything else that America holds dear go. And that means all the freedoms of speech, all the freedoms of voting, all the freedoms of association, all that stuff. They're willing to just let it go in exchange for whatever little, you know, bone they're getting from the king. And that's a really sad state of affairs.
Yeah, and couple that with the feckless mainstream media. I watched the Trump, and you did a great piece on this too at narrative.org, West Point speech, that incoherent, rambling,
Oh, yeah.
MAGA type, trophy wife, I got everything, you have nothing. West Point, these are West Point graduates going to ship off to protect his ass and his interests and his relationships and his money. And, you know, I read a headline in the New York Times the next day where it's like Trump gives commencement speech to America's future soldiers, something like that. And I'm like, no, he didn't. He didn't do any of that. He rambled incoherently and talked about himself and sounded like a complete fucking selfish moron. He sounded like a dictator. They didn't cover any of that. So you combine mainstream media's
Mhm.
fear,
Mhm.
inability to stand up, chest out, shoulders back. Here's what happened. You've got the perfect environment in the United States right now for Donald Trump to continue to do what he's doing, to
Yeah.
continue to hurt that country, continue to destroy Canada. Someone made a comment in this comment section.
Mhm.
By the way, I love all y'all. Just
Yeah.
perfect. I mean, it's such an incredible interaction today. We've got hundreds of people here. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for joining us in America and
Great
Canada,
comments.
around the world. Yeah, where they're like, remember, this isn't all Americans that are that selfish. It's only some. Oh, I know. It's the MAG Americans. The vast majority of that beautiful country is in tears. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten, even today, hundreds of messages from Americans over the Carney speech and the reassertion of Canada's sovereignty to stand up for freedom and democracy and people's votes, the Athenian way, which is the Canadian way, give democracy to the people, give people representation.
Mhm.
I know that's not America, but I'm pointing out, and I think we're pointing out that we see it. We see what's
Yeah.
going on in the United States of America. We're fortunate to be here in Canada, but we also know that all of America, not part of it, all of America needs to turn back to what America was. We're happy to cede to America being the leaders of the free world. We're going to
Mhm.
take over that mantle because right now you've got a complete moron in charge. Just like I said, vile, trashy, profit taking, lying con man
Mhm.
who's running the United States of America. But we know that is not the soul of America, to everybody's point here. So
I
thank you,
love what you're
PJ.
saying,
Yeah.
Dean. I really love what you're saying because I think that there really is a difference between the kind of aristocracy, the kind of oligarchy that Donald Trump is trying to build in the United States, which is greedy and gaudy and self-serving and really not effective. And then the kind of aristocracy that exists in Canada, which is there's lots of very rich people in Canada, many, many very rich people in Canada,
We
but
have
they
our
don't.
dickheads too, yes.
Yeah, but they don't flaunt it in the same way. That's not the same. Their their greed is not so apparent. They're not out there chasing the palaces in the sky and the incredible, crypto billions that they're going to be getting from their Arab friends. They're not doing that. They're busy thinking about how to maintain democracy, maintain freedom, and make sure that everybody gets a piece of the pie. And that's a real difference between Canada and the United States. And if we land up with an oligarchy that is Trump-esque in style in America, how sad will that be? How sad will
Mm.
it be if we land up with this, greedy, greedy group of people who are only interested in maintaining themselves? And then what will happen to average Americans who are at this very moment about to lose their health care? Like what is going to happen? Are we going to have this like genocidal sort of sweep through America as people can't afford health care? They can't afford their basic living. That's where we're sort of heading if we continue down the path that Donald Trump has set out.
Well, and you keep in mind too, you talk about how mean, and it is happening. It's already here. I mean, you talk about it. What will happen? It's happening.
Yeah.
But a great point that someone made the other day, and I'm trying to remember who it was to give him credit for it. It wasn't my thought; it was somebody else's. That cutting 14 million people in their health care out of Medicaid, leaving them on the street, leaving them without any coverage whatsoever, cutting 14 million people amounts to a tax break that not one single person in that orbit in the top 2% would notice. It's a rounding error for
Right.
those people.
Right.
It's a
Right.
rounding error.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like 3.7%. I think their increase in the decrease in taxes that they get, which is nothing
Yeah.
for them. They won't even notice a thing like that at all. It
No.
would mean absolutely nothing. Which leads us to the number one story on the countdown today, which is Doge has been not our favorite. I mean, a good subject for us to talk about, but we haven't been crediting them with much success. They did have maybe some success in cracking down on all these government credit cards. There's a new audit that came out that's all about how much money is being charged to the Pentagon credit cards accounts, including $500,000 on gambling, drinking, and online gaming on government credit cards. The Doge did cancel over 200,000 federal credit cards after finding $40 billion in annual spending with minimal oversight. But this particular, investigation in the Pentagon is quite something. One Air Force member withdrew over $10,500 from a Maryland casino in 5 months, while the Pentagon failed to review 11,000 transactions that it also had never had any really oversight. They're all from high risk merchants, including casinos and nightclubs. One Pentagon insider described it as in addition to everything else that's going on with these credit cards, he said that there's a cold war that exists between the leadership right now under Hexet, and that's why there's very little being done about this kind of overspending. But unbelievable the amount of gambling, drinking, and casinos that are getting all the money from the Pentagon. And the Pentagon has a very big budget. I mean, it's extraordinarily well funded, and it's getting more money in this upcoming big beautiful bill. So, what do you think of that?
Um, you know, any human being can, if you put him at the major league level and you put him at the plate to hit a baseball, might run into one.
Mhm.
Like you might be able to hit one, right?
Yeah,
If you do it 100 times, you might run into one. They ran into one. They ran into a fastball. I mean, and I'm sure they're pimping this like they've just saved the world too. I'm sure Doge is like, look at all we've done. Meanwhile, Elon Musk got $8 million a day for the past 4 months to do this job. So
did he
when you're
really?
talking, oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't get that. Wow.
Oh, yeah, total. Yeah. Meanwhile, he also, I think he absconded with close to 3 to 4 billion in government contracts to do whatever he wants unfettered. Who knows what he does with 3 to 4 billion in government contracts between Tesla and SpaceX and the Boring Company and all the other bullshit that he does. So to me, that's government waste. Again, I go back to those two words, rounding error. Sure, of course, you got a government credit card, you give it to a human being, that human being's probably going to spend some money on gambling and booze. If anybody's ever had an expense account,
Yeah.
which I have I used my former expense account at the radio station I used to work at to maybe put an extra meal through it. Yeah. Did I ever go to the casino and take out thousands of dollars and get a receipt at the casino? What are you doing, Major Dean? Why are you taking 10 grand out of the casino? No, because I'm not a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So sure, great. They found 40 million in extra expenditures that lacked a bunch of oversight. Yeah, awesome. That's great. But what about the 2 trillion you said you'd find?
Yeah.
What is Elon Musk doing with the millions you're paying him a day to capture your data and steal your data? I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
They hold this thing out like they're the arbiters of catching bad guys and killing government waste. The entire exercise has been about government waste, and they're the ones that are wasting it.
Oh,
They're like
100%.
that's
Yeah.
that's the other part of this. Like the false equivalency around
Mhm.
stories like this are fucking hilarious to me, Seth.
Yeah, this isn't really a credit to Doge because they canceled a bunch of credit cards. The actual audit happened, from the Pentagon, and they were able to find all these overspends on all these personal accounts. But you're absolutely right about Doge. This is just nothing more than just a giant surveillance machine that they're building. And secondly, was an opportunity for Elon Musk to get rid of all of his critics and all of the agencies that were investigating him, and
Totally.
basically give himself his own contract. Today, I gather he's spouting off about how we're going to recolonize Mars as he's, putting up another SpaceX, um, SpaceX, I guess rocket, some new rocket they're developing. But I mean, it's this guy's ideas of problems that we have to deal with are so not immediate, that there's someone in the future. And many people say we can't even get to Mars. There's no way we can get to Mars because it's just too far away. It's not going to happen. And this guy's
Yeah.
just like selling people on a pipe dream. So,
Well, the
you
whole
know,
thing's, dude. Doge was a pipe dream. Tesla make great cars. It's now a pipe dream.
yeah,
And I don't know if you watched some of the interviews that he did last week, where he played the victim, where he's like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I don't think I'm going to spend any more money on advertising for politics. I think I've done enough. Everybody's ruined my life, and we're going to find you." He pointed at the camera. "We're going to find you. I'm going to get you for hurting all my cars and my reputation. I'm going to do all those things. I'm out." He's like, "I'm out." He backed up. He's like, "I'm
yeah.
not interested in doing this anymore." This is the same week he's in Dubai on the president's plane meeting with the people from Saudi Arabia. It's the same week he's at that disastrous Oval Office
Oh
thing
my
with the
God, did you
South
see that?
African
Oh,
president. Oh
oh
my
my
God,
God.
watching videos that are out of the Congo, not and I mean, like, he's still totally involved.
Yeah,
So you can't believe anything the fucking guy says
no,
anyway. And it gives me great pleasure to know that the Pentagon found that information out. It had nothing to do with Doge, but yeah, dude. And here's let me just ask you a question.
yeah.
The big beautiful bill, 5 trillion in increased spending, five
Mm,
trillion in increased deficit spending. This is on the back of him completing his work at Doge, not finding 2 trillion in savings.
no.
So,
He found like a few billion dollars, I think, 300
well,
maybe. I don't know.
but like, wasn't that the whole goal, to reduce spending so you don't have to increase the deficit
Yeah,
ceiling?
yep, that
And
was
now
the
they increased to
goal.
5 trillion and they didn't find anything,
It's
right?
not really there. It's the same thing as what's happening with the FBI. Dan Bongino out there today saying they're going to investigate a 2023 thing about cocaine being found in the White House, and they're going to find the pipe bombs and all these other conspiracy theories that the FBI is now There's nothing there. They ain't there. There's no story there. We know that already. It's been investigated. And but there's nothing in Doge either. It turns out the American government is actually quite well run and didn't have that much fraud and as they were claiming, and they couldn't get anywhere near $2 trillion, and that is why he was basically lost his job. I mean, so they say. I still think he wields a lot of power inside that White House. They
I think
know
he
they
does with
need his
Trump,
money.
but did you read that article? I can't remember where it was from. I'll put it out this week. I'll get people. You go to my Substack and subscribe, and you can check it out. About how the entire Trump administration just hates the guy. They mocked him every
They
time he
do.
came to the room, and when he left
Yeah.
the room, he'd mock him again. Like, the guy's just a fucking crackpot. Get him out of here. And there was one senator who went unnamed. He's like, "That might be the biggest piece of shit I have ever met in my
He
whole
apparently really is not the
life."
nicest guy in the world at all.
No.
And so I'm putting together an article. It'll be out in the next couple of days about Starlink, which must be the most pernicious thing you've ever seen in the world. So that is coming out actually on Narrative in the next few days. People need to check that out. We are running out of time, but it's so nice to have Dean Blundell back that I want to hear more about your profound trip. And I would tell me something that was really lovely and magical and that you wouldn't normally hear about. What happened that you loved?
Oh, okay. So maybe the coolest thing, because I practice this poorly, but I practice Stoicism. It's a philosophy about control. It's a philosophy about kindness, about doing good things for people. The fruit of this life is of good character and doing acts for the greater good, giving your agency to other people, and adherence to the truth and facts. And so, one of the forefathers, kind of the poster child grandfather of that philosophy, is a guy named Marcus Aurelius,
Mhm,
who was a Roman emperor. If you know anything about the Roman Empire, it was despotic. It was like a murderous authoritarian, empire making machine.
mhm,
And he was one of the first emperors to go, "We're not doing that anymore. I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to ask other people around me to be good people. I'm going to focus on the things that matter, which is wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance." And so, to be given that much power in a time when you are all powerful, you are deified. Emperors were gods back in the day. And just for him to say, "I'm not a god, I'm just a man that's here to caretake the beautiful people of Rome and the Roman Empire." That's it. So, short story, had an afternoon at the Coliseum, and then the next day I went to the Pantheon, which his, predecessor, known as his father, Hadrian, built with the former emperor named Marcus Agrippa. And if you haven't been to the Pantheon, Pan meaning all, Theon meaning God, and I'm very atheist. The Pantheon was created 2,300 years ago. 2,300.
wow.
It is an enormous building where you walk around the corner after you visit Trevi Fountain, which is also incredible, and you see this ode to all the people of the world and everything they worship. And it is, it brought me to my knees. It made me cry. I cried. I
Mhm,
cried to tears. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. Because to understand the will of people back then, to
mhm,
understand what was built back then and why it was built, which was originally to welcome, Marcus Aurelius kind of put the finishing touches on the Pantheon after Hadrian rebuilt it. Um, and its intention was for the people. And I was brought to my knees not just by the size of it, by the technology that didn't exist for that to actually exist and to exist for thousands of years. I was brought to my knees because that was originally supposed to be the home of all people, all the
mhm.
gods, everything you worship, who you are, what you are. And it obviously, got run over by Christianity and turned into a church, which is why it survived, because, religion takes care of their shit. But it reminded me of why we're here. It reminded me of why we're here is to see people and bring together people in a democratic fashion,
Mhm.
to empower people to live together, to be inclusive, and to love each other, and to achieve great things together. And so for me, and I was lucky enough to get a couple of sketches that were done a few hundred years ago of the Pantheon, brought them back. I just had them framed today. It cost me a fortune. It was ridiculous, but I did it. Because to me, that's a reminder of why we're here. It's not to drive a narrative, it's to offer all things to all people and to do acts of the only fruit of this life. To be a good character and acts for the common good. So that was incredible for me. The wine and Chianti is not bad too, dude. You should go.
I've been. It's terrific. It's beautiful. That was a beautiful story. I had no idea the Pantheon was based on a tribute to the people and for the people. And it's such a great thing to bring the show to a close because, of course, you're talking about. We started the show about the king talking about being a service oriented kind of country that cares about its people. It's that he's all about service to the people and how different that is from what Donald Trump is building. And it's such a nice through line as you talk about the Pantheon and Stoicism. So thank you very much for doing that. And thank
Great to be
you.
back, my brother.
It's great to have you back. I'm really thrilled you're back. And thanks to everyone who showed up today for the live show. You can always catch this as a podcast. You should all subscribe to deanblundell.substack.com where you can find out about the King's speech in great detail. You can also subscribe to narrative.org. That's my site where we do all sorts of different things. Thank you, Dean. It's nice to see you and welcome back.
Thanks, buddy. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks,
Okay,
all.
cheers.
Really nice to be back. Sorry we left you for a bit. I won't do it again.
We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.